So hi, Josh. Thanks for accepting the this interview for Ceramics Today. I would like, first of all, to ask you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Josh Powell. I'm 23 and I'm an art and design student at Birmingham City University.
Excellent. And based on your experience, you choose to use ceramics as a medium to develop your art. So could you tell me a bit, what is your experience with ceramics, and what are they offering? Are ceramic offering more opportunities or limiting your way you develop your art?
Mhm. I decided to experiment with clay and ceramics as a way to discipline my mental health and to just transport myself into a new realm and explore ceramics and clay with trauma to translate my personal experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder and emotional trauma. And I thought it would be important to use ceramics for my final year of uni to discuss these issues and to allow people to see what I feel within my ceramics world, I guess.
Yeah. Is that, I understand that is effectively a way to express all those feelings and this experience you've got, but is clay as well bringing you some kind of way to relax or to feel better? What is your experience with clay?
Within clay, I'm able to embody it and translate my, transfer my trauma into this medium and allow the medium to generate sensory emotions, feelings to help me relax and finally allow something else to take care of something that I'm struggling with.
Okay, that's very good. Is that because the clay, you can manipulate it, you can compress it, you can
Mm-hmm.
transform it, it keeps like the imprint as well of what you're doing
Yeah.
on it? Is that that reason that makes you feel better or feel a way to express those
Well,
emotions?
that definitely does play a part in it. Being able to manipulate clay and to form it in ways that I can describe trauma and traumatic events within a
Yes.
piece of art. Um, for example, like broken pieces or trapping pieces inside of something so that it cannot be accessed, but you have to appreciate it from an angle rather than being able to like use it in a functional way.
Okay, you show me some pictures of pieces that you've built, unbuilt, or thrown and then deform or transform. Is that the way you express your feelings, you express your way of thinking about that piece? Can you tell me a bit
Yeah,
more about that?
I am currently just experimenting with ways I can manipulate ceramics. Um, Currently, I'm experimenting with taking casts of the inside of a vessel
Mm-hmm.
because the body is a vessel itself,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to express the feeling of emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
And by casting that inside of a vessel, you're able to see the imprints and residues of the trauma
Mm-hmm.
in the vessels through the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'm experimenting with is drag, the art of drag, using that through clay as well by incorporating clay into makeup. And it's something I'm expressing at the moment and thinking about how I can like make a start with it with
Mm-hmm.
the support of my tutors as well, how
Mm-hmm.
they can help me express that.
Your art as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, talking about the vessel and the fact that it's an empty vessel, yesterday I was watching a very interesting interview of Magdalene Odundo, who was talking for Connect 21, which is like a conference around ceramics, and she was mentioning the vessels that she built. That for her the inside of the vessel was even more important than the outside. Is that something that relate to what you're doing, or?
Yeah, definitely does relate, because people don't see the trauma on the outside necessarily. Some people can see the trauma on the outside, but in terms of like emotional traumas from past events that have been like verbal or somewhat physical to a certain degree, you don't get to see the inside. You don't get to see how horrible it is to be inside that trauma. And I feel with clay, you really appreciate the beauty of it, but you never get to appreciate the dark bits and that traumatic event that happens with clay, where it gets manipulated and formed into these shapes that it's forced to be formed into.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that you prefer unbuilding to throwing. Is there like a difference in the way you experience the art when you do unbuilding compared to throwing?
Working with hands, I'm able to think more about what I want to do, as well as allowing my body just to enjoy the process, rather than having to be really specific with throwing and making sure everything's perfect to hold the form. And I think that's mainly because my style is very dystopian. And I just like the concept of things not being perfect.
Yes.
Which really relates to my project.
It's basically the perfect imperfect things.
Yeah.
Or do you think like ceramics, we have like different ways to appreciate it? We can see it at distance, we can touch it, we can use it as a vase or a bowl. What do you think your pieces are best to be approached by someone who's looking at them, to feel or to perceive that trauma that you put in the piece?
I want the audience to be able to experience what I've created in any way possible. I want them to touch it. I want them to throw it. I want them to break it. I want them to really understand what it's like to have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. And it's not having it on a shelf, just exhibited there. You want a full experience of the piece.
Yeah.
That's great. So you've joined Sundragon Pottery to have access effectively, I guess, to a space to make some pieces and to be able to fire them. Is that because the university is closed at the minute, or is because you needed to join a pottery studio? Or what's the reason?
It's mainly because my uni doesn't have ceramic facilities. And I was really passionate about using ceramics. And I feel that it was important for what I wanted to talk about, because I'm typically painting or using plaster to create things and create sculptures. And I didn't want to do something that I've already done. I just wanted to do something completely different. And that's the way I work. It's always developing. And I'm always telling stories about what I want to make.
Yes. And how did you learn then to make ceramics? Did you take a course, or it was by watching someone else doing it, or?
During my secondary education, I did have ceramics as a subject, and I did learn a lot of hand building skills from that. As well as like reading books and just watching YouTube videos on how to hand build. But it was Sundragon Pottery that taught me how to throw. And I had sessions with Kate, and she taught me how to throw on the rail in the old Printworks and Moseley School of Art.
Excellent. It's a very different experience throwing compared to unbuilding. As you said before, I think unbuilding give you time to reflect and feel more the clay. And then when you're throwing effectively, things happen much more quicker. So you need to be on the instant, but you can't really correct as much as you can do when you're unbuilding, basically. But it's lovely. Can I ask a question about how do you decorate your pieces? Because on the pictures, I haven't seen them physically, haven't been able to touch them yet, but I saw that you've got some very nice glazes. And is that to combine as well with what you express through the shapes, the form of the vessel?
Currently with glaze, I am using the idea of makeup and how it's hiding a layer of trauma and hiding all these residues and traces within the clay pieces, such as like fingerprints or imperfections. And the glaze is thick enough to cover that, as well as like hairline cracks. The glaze can cover that, and you don't get to appreciate those traumatic issues within the ceramics work. But I have been using a wax resist on specific areas of the clay that I want to keep visible for the viewer. As I feel it's important just to have pieces of those layers leaking out and just sharing bits of that trauma.
Yes. So we were discussing the influence of other potters in your art or in your research. And you mentioned a couple of them, and probably we're going to start with Adam Schieverdecker, which I think...
Yeah. So I found it fascinating how Schieverdecker uses clay in a way to communicate through his material use and trauma, and the connection between this and my personal trauma through childhood history. And nobody can see that I needed help at the time. And that's how I can relate to the beauty of this work, is you can see that amongst the beauty of the porcelain vessel, there's trauma among it. And there's the fixation that Schieverdecker is inspired on the idea of the decay within works, which relates to the concept of residue and traces, which is the making process for my subject matter, which is quite a way of telling a story of trauma. And yeah, that's it.
That's it. Well, I think it's quite well explained, I think. And I find as well the combination of a piece which is perfectly thrown at the bottom with the top part of the vase, which is broken or deconstructed, particularly challenging. Like, yeah, it's questioning a lot. So yeah, thank you for sharing. The other artist that you wanted to mention is Book de Vries, which also combine pieces together. If you want to comment on his piece here.
Yeah. So this is a series of works that I like. This is one of the pieces, and it's a beauty of destruction. How a collection of these broken pieces were all capsulated within a clear vessel for the viewer to see, but not able to handle. And it's a way of preserving the delicacy of these pieces and reminding us of the beauty that these once had. It's at that point where the object isn't any longer worth restoring. And instead of restoring, it's nice to be able to turn this into a sculptural product by vesseling this up into that clear vessel and having that clear vessel that resonates within the body, and the concept that the body is a vessel and when someone that experiences trauma feels empty and worthless. And by translating that back into this piece of art, it's worthless to many people, but to some people, it's beauty and it's worth something.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing your feedback or your impression on this piece. I'm going to stop sharing this and then come back to you. So thank you for this interview, which gave us a bit of insight into your art, the way you approach ceramics in your art and design degree. And we wish you the best in developing this project, because it's worth exploring what you've done in your different vessels. And we hope as well that at some point we will be able to see some pieces exhibited and see them face like closer than just through a video or images. Thank you very much, Josh, and then all the best to you.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.